They didn't forget me. They left me. At Walmart. On purpose. All because I walked too slow. According to my daughter-in-law who thinks she's funny with her. You move slower than dial-up internet jokes. 1 second I'm comparing prices on peanuts. The next I'm standing alone under the fluorescent lights, holding a half-full shopping cart in my pride. No text. No call. Just the soft, mocking hum of the intercom and a heart full of realization. My own family decided I was an inconvenience. Well, guess what? If I'm too slow to shop with, I'm definitely too slow to leave an inheritance. So instead of a will, I left them my debt, credit cards, hospital bills, the whole shebang. Now they're the ones stuck at checkout. I sat on that grimy Walmart bench for an hour, next to the claw machine full of sad stuffed animals nobody wins, waiting for someone to realize I was gone. They didn't. No missed calls. No apologetic texts. Nothing. Just the slow drip of realization that after 72 years of holding this family together, raising kids, wiping noses, cooking dinners even when my knees ached, I had finally become a burden. A stray shopping cart they decided to abandon in the frozen foods section. The anger didn't come right away. First it was confusion, then hurt. But when I finally got a ride home from a kind employee named Paul, whose kindness, by the way, outshone my entire family's that day, the rage started to settle in. Cold. Steady. A kind of betrayal that makes you take inventory of your entire life and wonder, why did I bother? That night, I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. The one where I keep my papers. The will. The life insurance details. The when I'm gone folder. I looked at the names I had listed. My son. His wife. My 2 grandkids. The very people who left me for walking too slow near a discount bin of Pop-Tarts. I laughed. Laughed so hard I cried. And then I picked up a pen. If they thought I was slow in the aisles, they were about to see how fast I could change a will. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee stronger than my tolerance for disrespect. Black, no sugar. Bitterness suited the day. I sat down at the kitchen table, papers spread out before me like a war map. It was time to stop playing the sweet old lady everyone thought would go quietly. If they could ditch me at Walmart without a second thought, I could rewrite my legacy with just as little sentiment. I started with the will. The original one was neat, kind. Too kind. Everyone got a piece of me. My son got the house, my daughter-in-law the savings, and the grandkids would each get college money. That was before they left me staring at security cameras and snack cakes like a fool. I ripped it in half. Then into quarters. Then into a snowstorm of legal confetti. Felt good. Instead, I pulled out my contingency version. I'd written it years ago on a day when I felt unappreciated, just in case. That version was more creative. The house? Going to a local shelter for women starting over, they need it more than Kyle does. The savings? Split between the Walmart associate who drove me home and a scholarship fund for kids aging out of foster care. The only thing I left my family was my credit card debt, well managed but big enough to sting, and a funeral bill they could fight over like raccoons in a trash can. Petty? Maybe. Justified? Absolutely. I even drafted a letter to go with it, not one of those sweet remember me notes. No, this one had venom. I told them how it felt to be treated like expired milk. How their little joke, leaving me behind like an extra cart, opened my eyes wider than any sermon ever had. I reminded them that inheritance is not a birthright. It's earned. Through love. Through respect. Through being decent. And they failed. I signed it with my full name. No mom. No grandma. Just Margaret Elaine Booker. The woman you underestimated. Weeks passed. They never brought it up, the Walmart incident. Not once. My son Kyle came by a couple times, mostly to check on the thermostat or to drop off expired leftovers wrapped in too much plastic. He had the nerve to ask if I was still mad. I smiled politely and said, "Of course not, dear. That's the thing about getting older. People mistake your silence for surrender. But silence can be sharper than a scream. I didn't stop living. No, I started living differently. I canceled the family Netflix account. Shut off the shared Amazon Prime. When Kyle called to complain, I told him, "Oh, I assume since I walk too slow, I must stream too slow too." He didn't laugh. I did. Then came the day that tied it all together. I received my medical results in the mail. Nothing fatal, but enough to remind me that time was shrinking. I took the letter, folded it neatly, and slid it into the file with the updated will. I booked a prepaid cremation. No service. No eulogy. Just me, a little ash, and the knowledge that my last move would speak louder than their silence ever had. 3 months later, I had the paperwork notarized. No second-guessing. No guilt. And then I waited. It was a rainy Tuesday when they found out. The day my lawyer sent them the letters. My daughter-in-law called first. Screaming. Screeching, really. Something about betrayal. "How could you do this to your own blood?" she cried into the phone. I replied calmly, "The same way you left your own blood sitting on a Walmart bench with no ride home." Then I hung up. Kyle came in person. Red-faced. Trying to play the guilt card, said he thought I forgave them. That we were past it. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And love doesn't mean reward. You abandon me like luggage, Kyle. You don't get to cry now that the baggage is yours." He stormed out. I made tea. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I had grieved the family I thought I had. What I felt now was something steadier, a kind of justice. The world keeps telling old people to disappear quietly. I chose not to. I made noise, not with shouting but with a paper trail. And in the end I wasn't alone. The friends I made at the community center, the ones who played cards and danced slow waltzes with me, they showed up more than my own kin ever did. They were the ones who deserved my story. My time. My gratitude. The family. They got what they gave. Nothing. Weeks passed. Quiet ones. The kind of quiet that isn't lonely but earned. The quiet of someone who's no longer waiting for an apology that will never come. Margaret filled her days with slow walks, early coffee, and paperback novels from the library cart at the senior center. She laughed more, especially with June and Tilly, 2 widows who played bridge like it was war. Every now and then, Margaret would catch herself staring out the window, not in sadness but in peace. She had done what she needed to do. She had reclaimed her dignity in a world that often told old women to be silent, grateful, and gone. But then came the envelope. Thick. Handwritten. No return address. Inside a letter. The handwriting shaky, hesitant. Childlike. "Dear Grandma, Mom and Dad are mad, but I'm not. I didn't know what they did at Walmart until I heard them yelling about it. That wasn't right. You always wait for me when I tie my shoes. I'm sorry they were mean. Can I come see you? Love, Emily." She was 12. The youngest. The quietest. The one who always sat beside Margaret during holiday dinners, picking marshmallows off sweet potatoes and whispering jokes about Uncle Mike's fake teeth. She was the only one who hadn't hardened yet. Margaret read the letter 3 times. Then again with tears in her eyes. Not the sad kind, the maybe there's still hope kind. A week later, Emily came over with a backpack full of library books and a tray of cookies she baked herself. Overcooked, slightly burnt on one side, and utterly perfect. They sat together at the kitchen table, the same table where Margaret had once rewritten her will, and talked. Not about the money. Not about the will. Just about life. Books. Bullies at school. Margaret's first kiss behind a church during prom. Emily listened. Really listened. And when Margaret reached for her hand, the girl squeezed back tight. Fierce. Loyal. That night Margaret made a change. A small one but meaningful. She added a new codicil to her will, not to reverse the revenge but to plant something new. A trust fund for Emily only. One she'd access when she turned 21, if she still chose to visit. If she still remembered what love without condition looked like. Because legacy isn't just money. It's memory. It's the stories they tell about you when you're gone, and the ones they remember quietly when no one's listening. And Margaret had decided hers wouldn't end on a bench in Walmart. It would begin again, in the heart of one girl who still believed slow walkers deserved to be waited for. The years passed, but Margaret's spirit didn't fade. It lingered, not in a ghostly way, but in the fingerprints she left on a dozen small lives, starting with Emily. Margaret passed quietly in her sleep on a spring morning, the curtains pulled open so the sun could find her one last time. No drama. No family crowding around for show. Just peace. Her lawyer, Mr. Dorsey, followed her instructions to the letter. No funeral. No staged tears. Just a private cremation and letters mailed out to those who needed to know. Kyle and his wife received the formal notice. The estate was distributed exactly as promised or not promised depending on how you looked at it. The shock was real. They contested it, of course. Hired some lawyer with bleached teeth and a too-tight suit. But Margaret had been sharp and thorough. Every document, every clause airtight. There was nothing left to take, except the guilt. But Emily got something else entirely. A key. A small brass key in a velvet box, with a handwritten note that read, "For when you're old enough to use it wisely, and kind enough not to use it selfishly. Love, the slowest walker in Walmart." The key unlocked a storage unit just outside town. Inside, Emily found boxes full of journals, old photographs, and cassette tapes labeled in fading marker. 1976. When Kyle still had manners. Casserole Chronicles Volume 2. And Don't Let Them Rush You. It was a time capsule of a woman the world had tried to overlook. A woman who had once made herself small for the sake of peace, and then one day decided to take up space. At 21, Emily started a blog called Letters from Margaret. 23, it went viral. At 25, she founded a nonprofit for elderly people abandoned by family. She called it Left Behind But Not Forgotten. And every year on the anniversary of the Walmart incident, July 12th, she walked into that same store, slowly, deliberately, and bought a single can of honey-roasted peanuts. She'd sit on the bench by the claw machine and read one of Margaret's letters out loud. Just loud enough for someone to overhear. Just loud enough to be remembered. Blog post title: The Slow Walk That Changed Everything. Posted July 12th. I was 12 the day my grandmother was left behind in Walmart. They said it like a joke, like it was funny. She walks too slow. She didn't answer her phone. We thought she got a ride. I knew even then it wasn't funny. I just didn't know how to say it out loud. Now I do. Because today I'm 28. And everything I've built, this blog, the nonprofit, the lives we've touched, started with that one quiet act of cruelty. But this isn't a post about cruelty. It's about her. Margaret Elaine Booker. My grandmother. The slowest walker in Walmart. The fastest writer of letters that could cut you to the bone, and then stitch your heart back together in the same paragraph. The woman who taught me that silence is a choice, and dignity is a decision. She didn't yell. She didn't confront. She didn't post Facebook rants or stage emotional showdowns. She just rewrote her will, and her worth on her own terms. And the world noticed. After she passed, I found her journals. Hundreds of pages of thoughts, doubts, grief, and stubborn, glorious humor. She wrote about loneliness and casserole recipes. About guilt and laughter. About love that wasn't always returned, but was given anyway, over and over like the sunrise. She gave me more than money. She gave me her voice. And through that I found mine. Today, like every July 12th, I went to that Walmart. I walked slower than I had to. I bought a can of honey-roasted peanuts. I sat on the bench next to the claw machine, and I read one of her letters aloud. People stared. Some smiled. Some rolled their eyes. And a little girl with big glasses and tangled hair stopped and asked, "Are you reading a story?" I nodded and patted the bench. "Want to hear how a slow walker changed the world?" She sat. She listened. And I knew Margaret was with us. Still slow. Still strong. And still unforgettable. Emily. Some people leave behind money. Others leave behind houses. My grandmother left behind a lesson. Walk at your own pace, and make the world slow down to remember you.